Tonight, heading into the final stretch of the federal election campaign. Where leaders are hunting for votes as politics dominates the conversation across the country.
Definitely, even my kids, which is weird, but everyone is talking about it.
The issues driving people to the polls. Also, a call for action on autism.
They're barely talking about disabilities in general. It's very disheartening.
What families want to hear in the last week before casting a ballot. Global service shipping alert, why Trump's tariff package is leading to delayed deliveries.
This company is saying that's now an extra cost for us, so you know what? We're out of that business.
Plus, must-see TV.
I was late to school because I saw moose, and my teacher was like, what?
How Sweden's great moose migration turned into a wildly popular show.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. We are entering the final week of this federal election campaign, one that seems to have Canadians engaged with record numbers at advance polls over this long weekend. Parties keeping a steady pace as leaders make a final pitch to voters and try to secure key ridings. CTV's Colton Prail starts us off with the state of the race.
In the final week of the campaign, the sprint to the finish started with Easter Sunday brunch.
Merci beaucoup de nous recevoir.
The Bloc focused on gaining ground in Quebec, while the Conservatives and NDP were all in on the West Coast.
We cannot allow government overspending.
Today, Pierre Poilievre promising to cut government spending, including on consultants, by $10 billion.
I will axe the inflation tax. We will do this by cutting waste, capping spending, reducing deficits, taxes, and inflation.
But the Conservatives are the only party that hasn't released a costed platform showing exactly how they'll hold up those promises and how much they'll cost. The party says it's coming, but not today.
Having them so late in the process, I think actually does a disservice to voters. And it's not just about how they vote on the 28th. It's what are they buying into on the 29th?
Pollsters say these BC stops are ones to watch. Nanos polling gives the Conservatives a slight lead over the Liberals in British Columbia, with the NDP a distant third.
If you're worried about Conservatives and you're worried about them getting in, vote for a New Democrat to beat Conservatives. Here on the island, that's who beats Conservatives.
Nationally, post-debate results show a jump in NDP support, while the gap at the top is down to 6 points.
Maybe Pierre Poilievre thinks that he can get a little bit of a breakthrough because if those vote splits in British Columbia favor the Conservatives, they could pick up seats.
Meanwhile, Mark Carney touting his newly released platform at a rally in the Nepean riding where he's running.
You need the government to step up and lead when the private sector is retreating under anxiety and uncertainty.
The Liberal leader promising $130 billion in new spending and a balanced operating budget in 3 years.
One area to watch in the final week, the senior vote. Nanos research has the Liberals and Conservatives essentially tied among voters under 54, but it's older Canadians keeping the Liberals atop the polls. Heather.
All right, Colton, thank you. Voters of every age out this weekend. Elections Canada says traffic has been steady since Friday, which saw a record-breaking turnout on day one of advance polls. CTV's Jeremy Charon takes a look at what that early turnout might mean for the election overall.
It may be Easter Sunday, but that's not stopping voters from casting their ballots in advance polls.
We're on our way back from event onto the next one, so it was just a stop for us.
In fact, for many, it's driving long weekend conversations.
Definitely, even my kids, which is weird, but yeah, definitely, everyone is talking about it.
Early concerns the holiday might impact voter turnout, eclipsed by record numbers Friday as 2 million people cast their ballot on the first day of advance polls.
Saturday, we don't have the numbers yet, but we were still seeing continued strong turnout and good turnouts again today on Sunday.
5.8 million voters cast their ballot in advance polls in the last federal election, a growing trend, says Elections Canada.
The numbers that we've seen over the last couple of elections is that more and more people are voting at advanced polls because it gives them the flexibility.
Voters here motivated to get out by what they believe is at stake this election.
I think with the Trump situation, and I think it's time that Canada needs to take an action on its own and grow up.
I think it's very important, especially with what's going on with our neighbors to the south.
I'm looking for a change. I'm looking for something different next 4 years.
Now, while voters cast their ballots in big numbers this weekend, the question is, what does it indicate?
I do think it shows enthusiasm. The question is where those votes are landing.
It's not clear, even to experts, what the record numbers could mean or if that enthusiasm will translate to Election Day.
There's an element of mystery to a big, long weekend, especially when people are voting like this. My guess is everything is on track.
Elections Canada says it'll have full voter turnout numbers Tuesday, once advanced polls have closed. That's also when pollsters expect to have a clearer picture of how election night could shape up. Jeremy Sherrill, CTV News, Ottawa.
You have options. That seems to be the message tonight from NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh as he pushes for support. CTV's Rachel Aiello is traveling with Singh and joins us now with more on his messaging.
Spending his weekend campaigning on the West Coast, today, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh found a new message about strategic voting in his Easter basket. As many families sat down for dinners that likely cost more than they have in the past, today Singh spoke about stopping grocery giants from price gouging on Canadian products and responded to questions about strategic voting and incumbents' ridings being at risk with a metaphor that speaks directly to the NDP strategy at this stage in the campaign.
No, you should definitely not put all your eggs in one basket. We've been taught this our whole life, folks. We know that you don't do that. And in this election, that totally applies. You shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. You shouldn't put all your power in one party.
The NDP leader then greeted locals at a spring fair in Cowichan and waved signs alongside his candidates in Nanaimo. Both stops in ridings the party currently holds, which at this stage in the campaign could be a sign of trouble. Though campaign sources insist Singh's tour is rolling through NDP ridings to remind voters, both blue-orange switchers here on the island and orange-red switchers in urban centres, that while they may feel that they need to cast their vote for either the Liberals or Conservatives to fend off the other party from winning, they do have another option. Rachel Aiello, CTV News, Nanaimo, British Columbia.
As you heard earlier, the Conservatives are the only major party that has yet to release its full costed platform, and that is drawing plenty of questions and criticism. CTV's Judy Trin has that story.
Hi, everybody. Happy Easter. He's risen.
2 hours after sunrise, Pierre Poilievre visited a Vancouver area grocery store to raise concerns about the decision of a past Liberal leader and the spending priorities of the new one.
Combining Trudeau's planned deficits with Carney's new promises, a fourth Liberal government would bring in $250 billion of additional debt. That's inflationary debt that will drive up the cost of food, housing, and everything else you buy.
But Poilievre is criticizing without giving voters the ability to compare. The Conservatives have called for tax cuts, removing the GST on new homes, and more defense spending, especially in the Arctic, but without unveiling a full platform. Reporter questions about the price tag of their promises were drowned out by clapping, led by campaign staff.
We don't even have a sense of who Pierre Poilievre's finance minister would be, or for that matter, who would be in his cabinet at all. And I think if people are starting to look more closely at the alternative presented by Pierre Poilievre, they may have a lot of questions.
Happy Vasaaki, everybody.
This weekend, Poilievre visited diverse ridings in southern BC, including the Spring 6 celebration, Vasaaki. Then on Sunday, he and his wife decorated Easter eggs with a family who also offered them prayers.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you.
Meanwhile, Poilievre's rival for prime minister went big when he dropped his party's fully costed plan.
The Conservative leader doesn't like our plan.
Analysts say the high cost of the Liberal platform doesn't appear to be hurting them.
It wasn't an accident that they released it on the long Easter weekend. It was basically a way to bury it, and it won't be too much on the front page because there won't be a lot of front pages on Easter Monday. So I think that overall, clever politics and good content from the Libs.
Pierre Poilievre now shifts his attention east towards the vote-rich region of the Greater Toronto Area. Those constituencies can often flip between Liberal and Conservative and can make the difference between a minority or a majority government. Judy Trin, CTV News, Richmond, BC.
For more on this final stretch of the election campaign, we turn to CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapellos. Vashi, big developments this weekend with both the Liberals and NDP unveiling costed platforms. What stood out to you?
Hi, Heather. Well, I have two significant takeaways, I think, from the platforms that were unveiled and the platform that wasn't. So my first takeaway is it's good that parties are producing these costed platforms so that we can know exactly what they plan to do and when they plan to do it. It's unfortunate that the Conservatives have yet to release it. I hope that they will. They are pledging to do so in the coming days. But it is even more unfortunate that all three of the main political parties for the majority of Canada did not release these platforms until after the debate. That information, I think, would have been pretty relevant for the debates themselves. I think when it comes to the platforms that have been released, my second big takeaway is that there are a lot of question marks that remain, primarily about how each of the NDP and the Liberals would pay for the stuff that they're promising to do. Particularly in the Liberals' case, for example, it sounds a lot like what we've heard over the past few years. We're going to find efficiencies. We're going to slim down the public service that we allowed to grow as much as it did over the course of the last 10 years. And we're going to cut back on consultancy. If I could provide a proof point on the last point, outward consultancy, that is something that over the last year, the Liberals already promised to reduce since it too grew with the size of the public service. Instead of it reducing year over year in the last year, it's actually increased by 13%. So I think the execution side of these platforms are going to be something to scrutinize over the coming weeks. Whether it impacts votes or the decision that voters are making as we speak is perhaps a different question.
Certainly a lot to unpack and a lot for voters to weigh as we head into this last week of the race. So what do you expect to see?
Well, in particular, what, Heather, I'm going to be watching for this week is whether or not the Conservatives and the Liberals start pivoting their argument to Canadians to ask for a majority. I think that everyone I talked to inside the campaigns has certainly seen that their internal polling has tightened over the course of the last week or a week and a half. And so the certainty of a majority or a minority is not really there. And I am curious to see if, in fact, that starts being the pitch in the final days of this campaign to voters from either of those parties, and what in turn that does to the pitch from the Bloc Québécois in Quebec or the NDP elsewhere, who have largely over the past week, in the NDP's case at least, been focused on becoming a strong opposition. In reality, their focus is really on saving the furniture and keeping the seats that they do. So I'll be looking to see how all of that transpires over the next 8 days. Heather?
Vashi, thank you for your insight. There's no shortage of businesses facing issues caused by Donald Trump's global tariffs. Now, one of the world's biggest shipping companies is cutting back on deliveries to the U.S. starting tomorrow. CTV's Kamal Karamali explains what prompted the move.
DHL delivers roughly 5 million parcels each day around the world. Now the shipping company based out of Germany will temporarily stop deliveries over $800 to American consumers starting Monday. It used to be that any business-to-consumer shipments into the U.S. worth over $2,500 required additional paperwork, a formal entry process. But now the U.S. tariffs have also brought on tighter customs checks, lowering that threshold to $800, meaning a lot more packages now have to go through that extra paperwork and red tape.
This company is saying that's now an extra cost for us, so you know what? We're out of that business. It's no different than any other business that if you increase their costs of production, there's a tipping point at which they say, I don't want to do this anymore.
And because of the additional costs involved, delivery companies from other countries like Canada could follow suit.
It's entirely possible that they could respond in the same way. Again, it's who's going to bear the cost of these administrative burdens that are being placed on deliveries.
This comes after Hong Kong Post said Wednesday it was suspending all postal services to and from the United States in response to the tariffs. This woman calling it an inconvenience for those who have loved ones in the U.S. For now, DHL says limiting its shipments to U.S. consumers is temporary and will be in place until further notice. But its shipments to U.S. businesses will still go ahead as usual, although there might be some delays. Heather.
Kamal, thank you. The NHL playoffs kicking into high gear tonight with a major Canadian matchup and some old rivalries renewed.
It's in front, nice there, scores!
The Toronto Maple Leafs beating the Ottawa Senators 6-2 in the series opener that marked the first playoff Battle of Ontario showdown in 21 years. Montreal, Winnipeg, and Edmonton all play tomorrow night. Coming up, the need for an autism action plan this federal election.
The system here makes it so difficult to access what your child needs.
Why those in the autism community are calling for support and recognition from party leaders. Often at the forefront of provincial issues, the autism community wants to ensure it's not forgotten on a national level. There are programs and funding streamed through the federal government, but families are disappointed the conversation has been quiet during this election. Tonight, we're looking at what steps a new government could take to create lasting change.
When Angela Brand's son, Misha, was diagnosed with autism at a young age, her role as a mother quickly evolved into researcher, therapist, and advocate.
I had to push for everything, for his diagnosis, for his therapies, and the system here makes it so difficult to access what your child needs.
Through intensive treatment, Misha has grown into an athletic, caring young man. But at 19, his needs are still quite high and he requires supervision. Faced with constant curveballs, the family poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into early intervention and therapies, something Brand knows not every family can do.
What do you want to hear from party leaders right now during the campaign? What are you looking for?
Well, they're barely talking about disabilities in general. So, of course, it's very disheartening. They say the measure of a society is how they treat the most vulnerable. Well, our citizens with disabilities, autism in particular, they're extremely vulnerable and they are not treated well.
During interviews, Pierre Poilievre has spoken about having a daughter with special needs, while Jagmeet Singh has talked about people with disabilities at a campaign stop. But advocates say that's not enough, as Canadians face a patchwork of services and funding different in every province.
It's a federal conversation because it's been so disjointed across this country. And, with every provincial election, autism almost becomes a political issue when it really shouldn't be. We should just be able to incrementally move things forward and not try to rebuild every single time something political comes along the way.
A long-awaited national autism strategy has been published, though critics say it lacks concrete policy direction. As a call to action, the Autism Alliance of Canada created an elections toolkit with 10 policy solutions to help create change. From funding training for more skilled support workers to increasing benefits and simplifying the disability tax credit.
How do we make it easier for families? How do we make the language simpler? How do we simplify the application process?
Do you want to go on the swing?
Yeah.
Smaller changes that could make a huge difference in the lives of those with autism and the people who care for them.
Nobody seems to care. It's a 4-year term, and it seems like their vision of the future ends after 4 years. Misha's going to outlive me.
For more on this story and the election toolkit, you can visit our website, ctvnews.ca. Still ahead, an Easter message from Pope Francis. What the pontiff said about international politics right after meeting with a world leader. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has shared sensitive war plans in a second signal messaging chat, according to a report in the New York Times. Hegseth allegedly created the chat in March, sharing details of an upcoming military strike against the Houthi group in Yemen. The group chat included his wife, his lawyer, and his brother, a U.S. Homeland Security advisor. These claims follow a previous chat about war plans to which a reporter was accidentally added. Pope Francis delighted crowds at St. Peter's Square as he made a brief appearance at Easter Sunday services. The pontiff did not preside over the Vatican's Easter Mass, but appeared at the end to give his blessing, which included prayers for peace, global disarmament, and the release of hostages in Gaza. Before Mass, Francis briefly met U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. This comes after Vance had contentious meetings with senior Vatican officials Saturday. And Prince Andrew making a rare appearance at an Easter Sunday service at Windsor Castle with King Charles and other royal family members. The controversial royal has been absent from public life after stepping down from official duties. Notably absent, Prince William and his family, who were at their country home for the weekend. Still ahead, a surprising TV sensation. Why millions are captivated with a reality show about moose. Millions are tuning into the biggest reality show in Sweden. There's no talking, no bickering, no script, and the stars are moose. It's called The Great Moose Migration. CTV's Heather Wright on why people are hooked watching a 24-hour live stream of their every move.
In Sweden, this has become must-see TV. Moose crossing rivers and grazing in forests, all captured by remote cameras and drones operating 24/7. It's a spectacle that has a growing and dedicated fan base.
I make sure I have coffee, I have snacks, I have prepared food so I don't have to be in the kitchen too long. Sleep, forget it, I don't sleep.
The Great Moose Migration began in 2019 on Swedish public TV. It drew about 1 million viewers in its first year, and last year, its viewership exploded to 9 million.
Everyone is so stressed today with the social media and the way we produce everything we do in our life, and this is the total opposite of that.
Hours can pass without any moose sighting, but when the animals enter the frame, viewers explode with excitement.
I was late to school because I saw moose, and my teacher was like, what? You saw moose in the city? And I was like, no, it's on the TV.
The genre is called slow TV, and that's exactly what has so many hooked. No plot, no drama, just Mother Nature at its best.
I think it's a genre that's going to stay with us, and it has some roots in reality television, of course, with following something as it's happening in real time. But unlike reality television, it's less staged, so it feels a lot more authentic.
The show began a little early this year due to warmer weather, but will air until May 4th. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
A captivating change of pace. That is our newscast for this Sunday night. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. I'm Heather Butts. Good night and happy Easter.